Happy Thursday, everybody. Hendrix and I are coming to share another positive birth story because y'all, if you're trying to prepare to have a positive birth, you're going to need to listen to positive birth stories. And unfortunately, there's too much clickbait out there of people who put these birth stories up on the internet and then you think that you're listening or watching a positive birth story. And then guess what? It's not positive, and I don't want to ever take away from those stories from people, but let's keep our minds in the right place. So I'm excited to share another family's birth story today. This family I was very fortunate enough to be able to work with and support. And so, yes, we're going to just jump right in. And of course, as questions come up for you, put them in the chat so we can answer them. But I'm going to go ahead and invite her in. Because she's amazing and she's going to share her story. And I also want to just preface by saying we have not done a live together. So this is real life and I don't know what he's going to need while we're on this call. So this will just be real motherhood too. You might see me have to nurse him. You might see me have to calm him down, move. I don't really know what's going to happen. So just give me grace and be patient with the whole process because he is awake and not interested in going back to sleep, but the conversation because I love this family and I can't wait for them to share their story. Hey,
Hello.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Look at that beautiful nursery.
Oh, thank you.
And I love that crib. That's cute.
Fair.
Does she sleep in there?
Not yet. She's still in the bassinet in our room, but
Okay. I was like, cute for pictures and all the things, but when she does go into her room, she's gonna have a beautiful room. It's like nicer than I love it. So y'all, this is Emilee. I will let her introduce herself and then we'll just kind of go through like her pregnancy journey, how she kind of prepared for birth and her birth story. Because again, most of us are going to be giving birth in a very similar environment. And so it's important to hear from people who've been in that environment to also have some inspiration on how you can make yours very positive as well. So Emilee, tell us who you are, when you gave birth, and whatever else you want to share.
all right. So, yep, I'm Emilee. I'm 27. I live in upstate New York. My husband and I had our baby girl July 3rd. Her name is Tisha. She's with her dad right now, actually. But so yeah, I gave birth in a hospital setting. That was kind of my plan from the beginning, although I was kind of anxious about it. I have a lot of medical anxiety, so a big thing for me was finding someone to support me and kind of instill in me that this doesn't have to be a fearful experience, that keeping in mind this is what our bodies are built to do, what we're naturally inclined to do. So Chanel was awesome in doing that. So yeah, I have a 3-month-old now, which is crazy that it's already been 3 months. I can't believe it, but
it is really crazy that it's been 3 months already. I remember like us talking and you're like, hey, I think this is labor. And like, and I'm like, wait, and now we have a 3-month-old. I feel like I was just, anyways. Okay. So y'all, she has a 3-month-old. Okay. So start from the beginning. You decided you wanted to have a certain type of birth. What kind of birth did you know that you wanted to have? And why did you choose that kind of birthing route?
Sure. So like I said before, I knew I wanted it in a hospital. I love the idea of a home birth. It's just, it's not for everyone, just how hospital births aren't for everybody. I'm just a worry. I was like, God forbid something go wrong, at least I'm there. So giving myself, some grace in that department by just having that checked off the list. But there was a lot going into it that I was, I'm a big baby when it comes to anything medical, which I now know that birth is not a medical emergency. It is just birth. It was not really big on pain medication, so that was something that I really wanted to be more educated on and have that be kind of a last resort if I needed it, but do as much as I could on my own. So yeah, just being able to talk with Chanel and with other moms and getting as many positive experiences as I could. Like you said at the beginning, it's a lot harder, unfortunately, than it is to find people with, positive birth stories rather than, oh, well, it was great until, and then, you know,
Right.
tumbling down that rabbit hole of, okay, all of these horrible things can happen. So keep your eye
Yeah.
out.
Right.
So having, you know, the proper guiding as far as even when I was pregnant, my baby was breech and then she was transverse. And then finally, a week before I delivered her, she decided to flip head down. So just having that education too, it was just such a big help and such a relief mentally and even postpartum, like emotionally, going over, you know, what we learned in the course and the modules too. Um, I'm very happy to say thus far I'm feeling awesome mentally, physically, emotionally. So I'm super grateful for that. Um, but yeah, just I felt very prepared, and so did my husband, being my daddy doula, going into the hospital setting and just feeling like we were in control of the situation was just such a blessing. So
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so tell us how. How did, because, well, let's start with before you guys felt that way, felt in control and like really confident about your experience or like going into the experience. Where were you at before? Like, what were you guys experiencing before you became educated? What made you say, okay, I need to take a course? Because I think sometimes, and this was me this first time, I was actually just talking to somebody about this earlier, there's a lot of information out there, like information overload, whether you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on Google, you're on YouTube, like Pinterest. There's so much stuff out there that you can just quote unquote research yourself. So what made you say, okay, I'm feeling this way and we need to take a class or a course versus just like utilizing those platforms to do the research yourself?
sure. So that was like a big thing is I was doing a ton of like you know birth stories and watching birthing videos on YouTube. I was on Pinterest saving all of this stuff to a Pinterest board, but a lot of it kind of contradicts each other, and so I, you know, I was like, so what's right, what's wrong, does it matter? And then just also being first time parents, like, okay,
Yeah.
what do we do, what do we expect during pregnancy, what do we expect during labor and delivery, expect afterwards? We just had no clue. Like
Yeah.
I was researching, okay, placenta encapsulation, like cord blood registry, like what is the golden hour, what is the breast crawl, like we had no idea what any of these things were. We had no idea about like counter pressure and how to breathe properly. So we really just, when we found out, obviously we were ecstatic. We were planning her and we were so happy to find out that we were pregnant with her, but we were also like, okay, cool. Like we did that part. Now, how do we prepare for her? How do we prepare for her arrival? So on and so forth. So it was just a lot of, I'm getting an overload of information from people that I know, from YouTube, from Pinterest, from books that I'm buying and reading. But what are like the key things that, like, okay, here's what to expect. This is normal. This is okay. And, you know, going into it as first time parents, I'm sure even your second and third time, you come across things and you're like, oh, I have no idea what to do, or I don't know what that means. But
Right.
just going into it completely blind and not knowing what any of this means is super overwhelming, on top of, you know, your hormones raging and everything, you know, being emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was like our biggest reason for finding you and, you know, going through your program and having the help that you gave.
Love it. I love it. And I loved y'all's like y'all when we were we were like going through our classes and stuff. I just would love like watching you and your husband just go through all the practices and like go through all the movements and positions and like have these real conversations. I think sometimes that's the missing piece in a lot of this is like, yes, like let's learn, but then also how do you know that you are doing the things properly that you're learning? Or like, how do you know what, if you have a question, what are you supposed to do with that? You Google the question because now we're back at square one again, right? So tell us like what that prep process was like for you to kind of get you guys to that place where he was feeling like a daddy doula and you were like trusting of your body. to go into having, go into have this natural birth?
Yeah. So basically, taking the classes every Thursday, that was like our thing. He would get out of work and we would go right into it. Just time difference, it worked out that way.
Yeah.
Thursdays, oh, it's our doula day, So on and he's a great guy to begin with, but I was like, I don't know if he's going to take this seriously because sometimes he's a goofball and whatever. I was like pleasantly surprised that we would even get off of the calls and he'd be like, did you take notes on that? I have it written down. Like, you want to compare and contrast? And I'm like, who are you? Like, what? And then when we weren't in classes, he'd be like, okay, we need to practice how you like your counter pressure because I want to make sure I have it right. So you're not like yelling at me day of, or I'm doing it wrong and you're too nice to tell me otherwise. And he would do our ice tricks with me just to feel what I'm feeling. So we would do our, ice cube tricks together and birthing ball exercise, breathing exercises. We did a lot of prep outside of our classes in order to kind of get ourselves ready. And then when it came to, flipping baby as well, he was right there helping with the forward leaning inversion and the side lying release and all of that stuff. So it was not only super helpful for us to prepare for her birth, but it also like really strengthened our relationship and kind of like our bond throughout the whole process. I think that's a lot of the time kind of get lost in, the circle of birth because they're not the ones doing it. So it's really fun. And I encourage any father out there that is having a baby to be as involved as they can because it made it so much easier on me when it did come to labor and delivery to have him there and just be like, focus on me. Like, it's you and me and we got this. And that was really nice to have. So, the prep did a ton for us as far as having her, but it did a lot for our relationship too, which was really cool. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. And I can I can totally relate too, and I think that's like it for me. Obviously, when we had our second and third baby, it wasn't our first time giving birth, but in each of the prep processes, because my husband was sitting right there in the class with all of us, and I was like, you're gonna go through this class just like every other partner, because you always can use a refresher, right? You can always and this was our first home birth too, so it was like I also want him to be just as prepared to be like supporting me in a new experience as well. And so I can completely relate to that, because again, just because I'm a doula or somebody's a birth worker or whatever, or has had babies before, doesn't mean that there are not areas of your relationship that can strengthen through such an intimate experience. And I can easily say that that was our experience as well. And we were on our baby moon and we were like, I was like, okay, I'm going to quiz you now. Like, what's the stages of labor? And like, he's like, no, Shana, I could teach this class. I can teach this class now. I know all the things. And I'm like, great. That's where I want you to be. And I felt so much more trusting of him in that moment, to know like, what to look for. And I trust you to be able to support me, if people don't make it here on time, right? Because that has been the case for some births. People don't make it on time, or you don't make it to your destination on time. And like, then it comes down to the partner support at that point. So I love that. That makes me so happy that you guys got that, added benefit out of just like preparing for birth. So tell us now, because you said he was my daddy doula. We felt so confident and like in our experience. So like, tell us all about the actual day of your birth story experience, and then like, what helped you get through that moment? What helped you have a beautiful experience, stay calm, confident, all those sorts of things?
Sure. So first, I would like to say that long labors are not as scary as some people make them out to be. I was in labor for 45 hours and it was worth every second of it. So I started having contractions on a Friday and I was like, this it? Because it kind of just felt like menstrual crampy, but I'm 9 months pregnant, so it's not menstrual cramps. So I tried not to get myself super excited. Just was like, all right, let's just see, where the night takes us, because this was at night that this happened. And so we just kind of sat there, and we were like low key a little bit excited. We were like, oh, like I'll probably wake up at like 3, 4 in the morning and like really be feeling it, and like we'll be having this baby.
Uh-huh.
Said, no, ma'am. So we went throughout the night. I was able to sleep even though we were excited. So we were like, do we stay up? Like, what do we do? Should I be on the ball? I was like, no, Chanel told me to rest. So I'm going to rest. And I woke up the next morning, still contractions, not super consistent, but still there. So I went about my day. I was able to talk through them. By that night, I started to be able to kind of feel them a little bit more and recognize them a little bit more. So we still stayed at home. I was like, I don't want to be checked right now. I want to see, how we're doing and kind of go from there. So then Sunday morning, we went into the hospital. I tested positive for the group B strep, so I had to get the antibiotics, and so they wanted us to be there beforehand to get the medicine, so on and so forth. And previous issue in my pregnancy, I had been really tachycardic, so my heart rate was really high, and I felt that happening again. So that was another reason that we kind of went in, just to make sure everything was good with me, was good with her. So at that point, I was in there, I was feeling them, but was still chugging along. And, I had Ray, my husband, with me, and was doing the, in for 4, out for 6, keep your focus. Here's your peppermint oil. Here's your lavender. So I got my IV, and they asked if I wanted to be checked first. No, but I was, I've been laboring for a long time at this point. Like, morbid curiosity, like, sure, check me. So I was at a 6. So I was like, okay, like, this isn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be, and I'm at a 6. So we're doing all right now. I was given the opportunity to use a birthing tub. I know a lot of women really love that. It was honestly just not for me, but I really loved being in the shower, and we had like a held shower hose and just had it past my lower back. Flash forward, she was sunny side up, so I was having a lot of back labor. And that, where I was feeling it the most. So being in the shower, being on the peanut, having him hit the shower on my back was like heaven on earth. So 90% of my labor when I was in the hospital was in the shower. So, that was all fine and dandy. My mom ended up being able to be there, which was great. Those were the 2 people I really wanted there with me. So then it got time to where I was like, okay, so I'm feeling like I have to go to the bathroom. And they were like, do you? I was like, I feel like I might. So they were like, well, let's just see where you're at, because that means baby's on their way. So I got checked again, and I was at they said like 8 to 9. So they were like, okay, well, let's do some practice pushes. So I was like, okay, So I did a whole bunch of different positions. And another thing to say is, you can plan how you want your birth to go as much as you want, as far as like, I want this, 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 and this. And sometimes your body is like, nope, I like it this way, and I want to do it this way. And in the moment, you're like, fine. And you just let go, and you let God, and you just do it. So I was adamant. I was like, I do not want to push on my back. Do not make me push on my back. And my midwife was awesome. I loved her to death. Still. So I tried hands and knees. I tried on my side. I tried the rope. And I honestly did better on my back, but again, knees and ankles out. And that was just how I was feeling it the most and felt the most encouraged to keep going. So I ended up pushing on my back, which I didn't want, but I guess my body did. So it took a little bit to get her out, but she finally started crowning, and it was my husband's that he deliver her. And so when we had said that at one of our appointments, they were like, that would be awesome if everything goes as planned. Totally. So he was all on board, super excited. So the time came and our midwife was like, all right, so you're going to deliver this baby? And he was like, what? And she was like, glove up. Like, what are you doing? Let's go. So he was like, okay. And so he threw his gloves on and was able to, once her head started to come out, you know, grab her head, kind of guide her shoulders through, and then the rest was history. He played chest. She was screaming. By the minute she came out, she basically came out screaming her head off. And yeah, it was just like euphoria there. It was the craziest, coolest, like wildest thing I've ever been through in my entire life. And she ended up coming out pretty quick. Fortunately, I did have a couple of tears. You know, tried to breathe through those last couple, but she had her own plan, and you know what? That's all right. Okay with it. She is perfect. Her APGAR was like as high as I think it's what, a 9 it can be.
10.
Yeah.
10, but nobody ever gets a 10.
Yeah, she was a 9 when she came out.
Wow, that's amazing.
Later on my chest, I'm obviously sobbing. She's sobbing. Everybody's sobbing. And so I had a wrap on my chest because I put her gown. They were like, all right, well, let's just throw one of these on you because I had the IV and it was difficult to get my sports bra back on and whatnot. So we pulled that down and she immediately, you know, started to do the breast crawl. And I was like, is she doing it? Is she doing it? And the nurse was like, yeah, let her. Like, let her do it. And she did. She her way right up and latched right on perfectly. It was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It was so crazy. So we, my office actually does, instead of a golden hour, they do a golden 2 hours, so long as
Amazing.
when they come out. So we were skin to skin, nursing, napping, all of that for the first 2 hours of life. And then they, you know, did height and weight. We did the delayed cord clamping, so that was awesome. She got everything she needed from her umbilical cord. So, you know, I will say not everything went to plan how I had imagined it, but a lot of it did. And everything as far as the actual delivery of her, it was everything I wanted, everything I could have asked for. So I wish I could do it a million more times. Like in the moment, like, holy crap, this is a lot. And then they turn 3 months old and I want to deliver you all over again. Like, you immediately forget everything that happened and you're just like in such bliss, and it's incredible.
That is amazing. Do you, like, what would you say helped you, or I guess what would you say helped you the most stay focused in, like, in your birth zone in the hospital? Because I think sometimes, like, and this is just my experience, included, is that it's loud in the hospital and there's a lot of noise, and then you obviously had to go a little bit earlier because you tested positive for GBS. So, like, there were hours that you could have been laboring at home that you were laboring in the hospital, and that could have caused you to be laboring maybe longer because you were there earlier. So what did you do, or I guess what helped you, what strategies helped you to stay in your birth zone and not get distracted by people touching you, by the cervical exams, by, you know, all the other things that can be distracting in a louder, colder space?
So a couple of things that I had written out and had discussed with my midwife before we went in for delivery was I have a lot of medical anxiety. Doctors' offices, dentists, hospitals, I don't like them. They scare me. I'm not a big fan of needles. So making it as comfortable as I could. So I wanted to kind of set it up like how I would have had it at home. So we didn't have a ton of bright lights shining. We had the windows drawn. I had my music. I had, you know, my oils that I was smelling. I had Ray and my mom, who just them on my own, or them on their own, were very, you know, homey feeling because they're who I'm around most. But making it more my setting. So stuff for the bed, so blankets, pillows. I made sure it was all from my house. I didn't want to wear a hospital gown. I wanted to wear my own clothes. Had having all of those things were very important to me to kind of stay focused. And on top of that, just having my support team there with me. The nurses themselves, I had wanted to request, like, leave me alone unless you need me kind of thing. And they kind of did that on their own, which was great. They were like, if you need us, here's the button. If you don't, we'll be out here. So that was really nice too. Just not having someone come in every hour and be like, okay, you're at a 5. Okay, you're at a 6. Okay, you're at a 7. Like, just, I had 2 cervical checks, one when I got there and one before I started pushing. And those were consented by me. So that was fine. But, you know, just being an advocate for yourself is a big thing that we talked about. But then especially once you're in that setting and having your support team know what you want in case you cannot advocate for yourself. So having the room set up how I wanted it and being able to have my support team there were big things. And there were a couple of times, you know, Ray had to speak up for me and be like, I think she's good right now. Or, you know, she doesn't want to talk about pain relief right now and that kind of thing. So that was really nice to have. I think the biggest thing is bring as much of home as you can with you. You have to, or if you choose to be in a hospital setting.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important, and it almost brings you a level of peace and comfort, like being away from your home. So tell me, like, or tell us what helped you. I know you said you spent a lot of time in the shower, which is hydrotherapy and pain relief option in itself, but what helped you? Because I think there's a fear a lot of women have out there about birth being like excruciating and painful, and some people have experienced that and share their stories on that. So what did you do to kind of help you manage the physical side of labor, to not end up needing medication?
So in the beginning, it was a lot of focusing in on my breathing. Obviously, at some point down the line, you do need to kind of remember to do that. I was like, shut up. I don't want to hear you telling me to breathe in for 4 and out for 6. I don't want to hear it. I want to yell right now. And so towards the end, I did a lot of mooing and a lot of deep moaning and breathing. And then I will say towards the end, I did get a little bit loud and vocal. I would, but the ring of fire is there and it's okay. And it's not a crazy thing, but you know, your body reacts how it reacts. And I let out a couple of F-bombs and that's okay. A big thing, you know, was trying as hard as you can to stay in your zone and focus on. A big thing for me was a lot of the times Ray would be like, look at me, you know, breathe in for 4, and he would count with me, out for 6. And, you know, being able to just, whether it's your significant other, it's a nurse, your parent, your partner, a friend, whoever it is that you have with you, just making that contact with them and kind of focusing in and like, okay, it is me and my baby and this person right now, and everything else around you doesn't matter right now. Thing for me. Towards the end, I did start to kind of veer away from that and started to get my head and into a different part of my head that was like, gosh, I can't do this. Like, you know, and it's, you have to try to keep your focus as much as you can, because the more that, you know, you get out of that focus, the rougher you're going to be on yourself. And a big thing that it was my mantra the whole time was my baby and I are working together. So I think a lot of the times, when giving birth, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is uncomfortable. I don't like this. When is this going to be over? And the way I thought of it was, you know, I'm going through a lot, but so is she. So, you know, I don't want to take out my anger or discomfort on her. And, you know, whatever, and getting out of that zone. Rather, I was like, okay, like you and I, it's you and me, girl. Like, we got this. Like, I know you're working really hard. I'm working really hard. And I know you're probably not super happy right now. I'm not super happy right now, but I'm going to be really happy when I see you. So you know, I don't know if it'll work for everybody, but that was a big thing for me was like, it's me and her. And like, that's not scary. Like, there's nothing scary about me meeting my baby. Like, yeah, you have to keep that in mind. And I think that that's, you know, a lot of the times where we fight is like, okay, well, I'm in the hospital and I have IVs hooked up to me and there's nurses asking me if I need this, that, whatever. And you're like, okay, well, I'm in the hospital. Like, I must be in pain. This must be a medical, you know, emergency. And it's okay. Yeah, I'm in the hospital, but I'm doing something that women and mammals have been doing for how many thousands of years. And this is just something that happens. So that was like the biggest thing for me is like, this is nothing to be alarmed about. Like,
Right.
you're going to meet your baby and, you know, she's going through it too now. She won't remember it like well, but keep that in mind that, you know, they're going through it too. And that was like the biggest thing for me to stay focused.
Yeah.
Aside from, you know, Ray really keeping me in my headspace. So
Yeah, I love that. Oh, so okay, so let's talk about Ray for a second because you said he was like my daddy doula. So
yep.
what was that? I mean, you said okay, these things like helped us just maybe provide a level of intimacy or just like closeness in our relationship, and then you got to see him on the day of provide that support for you. So like, tell us what it was like to have a partner who was prepared. I mean, obviously you don't have anything else to compare it to, which is great because having a partner who's not prepared is not a fun experience, everybody. Take it from me. But tell us what it was like to have a partner who was educated, who was supportive, who were able to do that with you and keep you in your zone instead of being like, oh my God, my wife, she just give her the drugs. Cause I've seen so many people be like, oh my God, I don't want to see my wife in pain. And the minute I see her scream or moan and it seems like she's in pain, just give her the drugs right away. And they kind of just like forget everything that they've learned. So what was that like for you having him be as prepared as he was?
Yeah. So he was from at least I say four, like cool as a cucumber, just there the entire time, which was awesome. Having him be educated going through the course with me as far as like these are the things to expect. So, you know, when I did start doing, you know, the rocking back and forth, deep breathing and the mooing, he wasn't like, what the hell is this? Like, are you okay? He was like, all right, yeah, she's going through surges right now. That's cool. Like, I'm here if you need me, kind of thing. Just early stages, just letting me do my thing. He was my contraction timer buddy, so I didn't have to worry about that. He did it for me, which was really nice to have. You know, he knew about the dilation station, so when I was in facing backwards on the toilet, he had that all set up for me to and just be comfortable in there. You know, he knew as far as when we were in the hospital what to tell the nurses if, you know, I wasn't in a place where I felt like talking. He knew, you know, what to say to them, where I was at. We kind of, it was like almost like a telepathy thing. Like he just kind of like, I was like, oh yeah, no, that's what I would have said. So great job. Being there supporting me during pushing and not freaking out. I was a low key a little bit scared that he was going to faint. The whole time I was pregnant, he was like, oh, why you think I'm going to faint? Like, I'm good. Like, okay, we'll see. But he held it together, which was great because he ended up delivering her. But just having him educated in those moments where, you know, anyone else who may not have had that education would be like, is that okay? Like, you know, should that be happening? To be experiencing that? Should I do something about it? When I first lost my mucus plug, it was a little bloodier than we would have liked it, and that was a little cause for concern because they weren't sure why. But he was like, you know, if her heart rate's good, baby's heart rate is good, and we've got that under control, then like we're cool right now. Like that's fine. So just being able to advocate, that was like a big thing that we talked about in the course as well. So, knowing my wishes before we went into it, having discussed it during the time of the baby head into delivery was huge. So just not being able to compare it to an experience where someone wasn't educated, little difficult, but having education like was such a huge help for me because I didn't feel like I had to be talking the whole time. I didn't feel like
Right.
I had it all the whole time. Like he was my right hand man the whole experience. So that was really cool.
I love that. And it is like, I think, I've seen you and then, a handful of other families when the partner has just been like, nope, she's good. We're
Yeah.
good. You can come back.
Yeah.
And for the partner to feel confident and empowered to respond for you is another level because, I think like you've said, it sometimes can feel like partners are missing in the conversation and in their role, but they serve such an important role. Even if you do have a doula in the room, like they still serve such an important role because they were a part of making the baby, most likely. So it's a good idea to have them be a part of bringing the baby earthside and like giving them an important role because I just couldn't imagine being a partner or a support person and just like sitting there and watching my partner go through labor without me supporting them in some way, right? If that is what works for both of you and you're like, it's just better if you just sit and watch, then like
Yeah.
know your partner,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
if you're like, no, I want you to be a part of this, like that is what it should look like. Exactly what he did. Like that is what it should look like. You're speaking up for me, you know my wishes, so that I don't have to talk and you're responding exactly the way that I would have responded because we've already talked about this. So that is amazing. And I'm just so proud of you. So tell us how it's been the first 3 months of life.
Wild, like in the best way possible, but it's been crazy. So, the first 8-ish weeks, you're like, okay, what do we do? Like learning her cries, how much she's eating. We're still exclusively breastfeeding, which I'm so thankful for. But, just learning how to be a parent and learning your baby's learning about you. It's a really crazy experience, and it's a lot of, okay, I'm gonna text my mom and
Right.
see what should I do about this or what should I do about that. And that's another great thing about your course as well. We have our Facebook group, so any questions, we have our calls, we have the Facebook group where we get opinions, insights from other mamas, which is really neat. But it's just been crazy. It's wild to see her just grow from this little 6-pound baby that was in preemie clothes for the first month of her life to this, I think she's at like 11 and a half pounds now or something like that. And, just she's like a little person now. She's, discovered her hands and she's cooing and talking to us and has her little giggles. It's crazy. And it's crazy to see you as like yourself change as a person in like a good way. Like, okay, I'm a mom now. I'm responsible for another person, which seems scary, but then you look at them and you're just like, yeah, no, I was made to do this. Like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it gives me such chills because I feel like I have found myself more and more through this experience. Like just learning who is Chanel and who is Chanel in this season, right? With 3 kids is different than who Chanel was with 1 kid or 2 kids. And I really believe that throughout your pregnancy journey and birth, like you unlock a side of yourself that you just didn't know existed. Like you find a powerful side of yourself that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know who you
Yeah.
were there the whole time. Girl, where have you been? And you get to like meet her and you meet your baby, but you also meet a new version of you. And it's just, oh, it's so amazing. So my last question for you is, what advice would you give people who are preparing for birth right now, who are inspired by your story, inspired by other positive birth stories out there and want that for themselves? What advice would you give to them?
So I would say a few things. One, hire Chanel. Take her course. If you're local to Texas, Dallas area, I
Yeah.
think,
Mm-hmm.
have her in person. She's awesome. And I'm, not getting paid to say that. I just mean it. She's incredible. I couldn't have done it without her help. Two, don't go into it scared and paranoid. People do this multiple times a day, every single day of every week, of every month, of every year. And we've been doing it for how many? It's an incredible thing to go through, and it's not something that you should be scared of. Um, I'll say it again, long labors are nothing to be scared of. I look back at that days, and I don't even remember, going through it and, experience the big things, obviously having her and all of that, I remember. But,
Mm-hmm.
a little hiccup here and there throughout the couple of days that I was in labor with her, that all goes away. So don't be scared of that. I would last thing, which was a huge thing for me, is educate and advocate for yourself. Go in with an understanding of what you're about to go through and advocate for yourself if something is being said that you're not with. And, what are the risks and benefits? Can I hold off on this and think about it type of thing is just a big thing. Don't be scared to do that. No one's going to take offense to it, but in the long run, you'll take offense to it if you just allow anybody to do what they want for you or to you in that experience. So
That's good. That's really good. I love that. Love that. Yeah. Y'all have to advocate for yourselves, and the only way you can do that is if you know what you're talking about. I tell people you cannot go into anything, whether it's birth or something else, screaming commands and you don't know what you're talking about, because then you're just looking ignorant and uneducated, right? So at least if you're going to advocate for yourself, like maybe it would be a good idea to know why you're advocating for this and what you are actually advocating for, instead of being just against whatever is being shared to you. And that's what I love about y'all's story, is that it wasn't like, oh, I'm pushing back on everything in this thing, right? Like, you could have said, I didn't want cervical exams, but then I gave in. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to tell you no because I don't want you touching me. And if that's the reason, and that's your reason for not wanting them, then that's your reason. But it's also okay to, like you said, change what you need in that moment and advocate for what you need in that moment. And, somebody came in and asked you, like, no, I had my one and I'm good. And like, that be okay, or just Ray being able to advocate for you and all the other things. So I just appreciate you guys being just transparent enough in this story to like also say, hey, I had this plan and it changed and I still feel peace about that. Like I still feel peace about my birthing experience and my story, because I called the shots and I made the executive decisions for what this looked like amidst change. So I love that. And I'm so appreciative of you sharing. Thank you guys so much for listening. If we'll stay on for like maybe another minute or so, if you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat. I think somebody asked where you were from, and I think she said at the beginning, so you might've jumped in late, but she is in New York.
Upstate New York.
And I'm going to look and see if there's any. This live will be saved for those of you who joined late. Are there any other questions about her story? The program is open and accepting families if you are interested in getting this kind of support and guidance for you and your partner. If you just go to the link in my bio, you can fill out a time for us to chat and kind of get an idea of where you're at so that I can support you and your partner. If it makes sense and we're a fit to work together, then we'll talk about what that can look like, so you guys can fill that out. I am welcoming new families in for the month of October. So make sure that you guys get on my calendar sooner rather than later before all of the spots fill up. Because we do try to keep it, I'm saying we, like me and Hendrix. I try to keep it a small and intimate group so that we can have great, intimate, one-to-one conversations in our calls. And, you get the time that you need during our time together. And then you might even see Emilee on the call, because just because you had a baby doesn't mean the calls end. Emilee and other postpartum moms that have still continued to join in on our calls to just ask about things that are happening in the postpartum, breastfeeding, colic, crying. I learned yesterday that the 2 month, there we go, the 2 month phase, or like around 2 months, which I guess I don't know how I didn't know this after 3 babies, or maybe I just don't think about it anymore because every day is a blur. But 2 months, they're at like the height of their crying. And so anyways, I knew there were a lot of growth spurts, and I know there are a lot of growth spurts, but I was like, yeah, he makes a lot of noise throughout the day. She's like, yeah, he's at the height of his crying right now. I was like, makes sense. But those are things that we get to talk about on the call, and we're just continuing to have those conversations. So anyways, I don't see any questions coming in. So thank y'all for joining. I will save this. Make sure you share it or save it for yourself to listen to again before you go into labor, because these are the things that are going to keep you encouraged and motivated. And Emilee, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for allowing me to support your family through this journey. Y'all, if you have any questions for her, feel free to contact her or make a comment under the video, and we can respond to you that way. And have a good rest of your week. And I will be continuing to share more positive birth stories as the weeks come, and more information, so that you guys all will continue to stay encouraged and empowered. So have a phenomenal week, and I will see you on the next live. Bye, y'all.